A boy against a giant, a simple stone against a mountain of steel, a destiny written by God himself. But how did a shepherd achieve the impossible? For 40 days, terror reigned on the battlefield. No one dared challenge the monster called Goliath. No one, until a young man, without armor, without a sword, and without fear, stepped forward to confront him. David was fighting the fiercest giant anyone had ever faced. What happened next? At dawn, the golden sun bathed the hills of Bethlehem, where a young shepherd named David tended his flock. His hands, though small and youthful, were deft with the sling, and his heart beat with a fire he did not yet fully understand. While his older brothers trained as soldiers in the army of Israel, he spent his days in the fields, talking with God and composing songs that only the sheep heard. David was the youngest of 8 siblings, and in his father Jesse's house, he was rarely taken seriously. To his brothers, he was merely the kid who tended sheep and dreamed too much. "David, stop playing with that sling and bring water from the well," shouted Eliab, his older brother. David sighed and obeyed, but inside he knew he was destined for something greater. Every time he gazed at the horizon, he felt that his life would not be confined to those fields. One night, while tending his flock, he heard a roar coming from among the bushes. A lion, its eyes gleaming, was stealthily moving toward a distracted sheep. Without hesitation, David grabbed his sling, selected a stone, and hurled it with precision. The stone struck the lion on the head, stunning it, though the animal did not fall. David ran toward it with his staff in hand and, with fierce courage, fought until he defeated it. That night, as he looked up at the starry sky, he realized one thing: God was with him. It didn't matter that he was just a shepherd. In his heart, he knew he was destined for something great, even if he still didn't know what. Far from the hills of Bethlehem, in the valley of Elah, a terrifying sound echoed through the mountains. It was a war cry, but not from just any army. It was the voice of a single man. Cowardly Israelites, bellowed Goliath, his voice like thunder shaking the earth. "Choose your best warrior and send him to fight me. If he defeats me, we Philistines shall be your slaves. But if I defeat him, you will be our slaves forever." The soldiers of Israel, camped on the other side of the valley, trembled at the sound of those words. For 40 days, Goliath came out at dawn, and at dusk, repeating his challenge. No one dared face him. Goliath was no ordinary warrior. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, his body a fortress of muscles and battle scars. His bronze armor shone in the sun like the gold of a king. His spear was thicker than the trunk of a young tree, and his sword could split a man in 2 with a single blow. "Do you not have a single brave man in all of Israel?" he taunted, as he strode across the battlefield, relishing the fear he instilled in his enemies' hearts. "Ha! Not even your God can save you from me." Saul, the king of Israel, watched from his tent with a pale face. He knew that neither he nor any of his warriors could defeat this monster. Meanwhile, in Bethlehem, David still did not know that his destiny was about to change forever. David was at home when his father Jesse called him. "David, I want you to take some food to your brothers at the camp," he said, handing him a bag of bread and cheese. "Find out how they're doing and bring me news." David nodded enthusiastically. Finally, after so many years of hearing about battles, he would have the chance to see the army of Israel in action. He slung the bag over his shoulder and set off for the valley of Elah, unaware that his life was about to change forever. When he arrived at the Israelite camp, he noticed something odd. The soldiers didn't seem ready for battle. Their faces were etched with fear. Then, a rumble shook the air. "Israelites, send out your champion," as he advanced, his shadow darkening the field. "Or keep trembling like scared rats." David shivered at the sight of him. Goliath was not a man, he was a beast. His voice thundered like the roar of a storm, and his armor shone like the sun. Every step he took made the ground tremble. "Why is no one challenging him?" David asked one of the nearby soldiers. "Challenge that demon?" the man replied with a bitter laugh. "Not even King Saul himself dares." David frowned. Something inside him burned with indignation. How could they be so afraid when God was with them? At that moment, Eliab, his older brother, spotted him and scowled. "What are you doing here, David?" he snapped. "Did you come to watch the battle for fun?" Go back home with your sheep. I only asked why no one is fighting that Philistine, David replied, never taking his eyes off Goliath. Are you going to fight? Another soldier mocked. Are you going to fight? Another soldier mocked. That giant would crush you like an... Deep in his heart, he felt the call of destiny. David's words began to spread throughout the camp like fire on dry grass. That young man says he will face Goliath. At first, laughter was inevitable, but when the message reached King Saul's ears, the atmosphere turned serious. Who is that young man? The king asked with curiosity. Minutes later, David was brought before Saul. Unlike the warriors who trembled with fear, David presented himself with unwavering calm. Your Majesty, fear no longer that Philistine, he said firmly. I will fight him. Saul looked at him in disbelief. You are just a young boy, and he has been a warrior since his youth. You have no chance. David smiled confidently. When I tended my father's sheep, lions and bears came to take them away. I faced them, defeated them with my own hands, and God delivered me from danger. That Philistine is no different. God will deliver me from him as well. King Saul fell silent. There was something in David's eyes, something that none of his soldiers possessed. Not fear, but faith. If you're determined, then go, he finally said. But take my armor. They fitted David with the king's armor, but it was far too big and heavy. He could barely move. I cannot fight with this, he said, removing it. I will go with what I know. He took his staff, his sling, removing it. I will go with what I know. He took his staff, his sling, and gathered 5 smooth stones from the brook. He didn't need swords or spears. He only needed his faith. When he stepped onto the battlefield, the laughter of the Philistines resounded. Is this the champion of Israel? Goliath spat on the ground and strode toward David, his shadow completely enveloping him. Am I a dog for you to face me with a stick? I'm going to tear you apart, boy. David was unmoved. You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, he replied. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts. The Philistines fell silent. There was something in David's voice, something that unsettled them. Goliath, however, roared with fury and raised his sword. Destiny was written. The wind stopped. The sun blazed over the valley of Elah as 2 opposing figures faced each other. On one side, Goliath, a giant clad in steel, a living mountain of fury and destruction. On the other, David, a shepherd without armor, armed only with a simple sling and 5 smooth stones in his bag. Both the Philistine and Israelite soldiers held their breath. The fate of Israel rested on a boy. Goliath stepped forward and the earth trembled. Come here, insect, he roared. I'm going to tear your head off and give your body to the vultures. But David did not back down. His gaze was fixed, his pulse steady. With calculated movements, he drew a stone and placed it in his sling. Goliath advanced with his enormous sword raised, ready to cleave him in 2. David swung his sling over his head. Once. 3 times. The sound cut through the air, and then the stone shot out like a bolt of lightning. It struck squarely on Goliath's forehead. The impact was brutal. The giant staggered. His smile vanished. His eyes widened in disbelief. And then he fell. The ground trembled as the Colossus collapsed like a tree uprooted by a storm. An absolute silence enveloped the battlefield. No one moved. No one breathed. David walked up to Goliath's motionless body, took the giant's sword, and with one final blow, sealed the victory. The Philistines, upon seeing their champion fall, were seized by panic and fled in terror. The Israelite army roared with jubilation and pursued them, driving them from their lands. The shepherd boy had defeated the invincible warrior. The echo of victory resonated throughout Israel. Soldiers raised their swords and shouted David's name, yet he sought no glory. He knelt in the dust beside the fallen giant's body and closed his eyes for a moment. He knew that he had not triumphed by his own strength, but by the hand of God. When he returned to the camp, King Saul regarded him with a mixture of awe and fear. Who are you, son? The king asked. David looked up with humility. I am David, son of Jesse, a shepherd of sheep. But everyone knew he was no longer just a shepherd. From that day on, Israel was never the same again. David became a hero, and his path would lead him to become the greatest king of Israel. He had faced the shadow of the giant, answered the call of destiny, and discovered his purpose. He was no longer merely the youngest son of Jesse. He was David, the chosen of God.
Attention, time traveler. Are you ready to join the time agents? Yes, you are now part of a special mission. The time agents travel to the past to uncover the most epic moments of the Bible and ensure that these stories are never lost. But we need your help. Every time you watch a video, you travel with us, witnessing miracles, epic battles, and moments when God changed the world. To continue the mission, make sure you're ready. Ask an adult to subscribe and turn on notifications. That way, you'll never miss the next time jump. Mission complete. See you on the next exploration, Agent.
Children around the world are discovering the Bible in a unique and exciting way. Each story has the power to impact a child's life, ignite their faith, and remind them that God has a purpose for them. Thank you to those who are already part of this mission. If you'd like to support us, subscribe, and even better, join us on Patreon to help us continue creating biblical stories for your family. Together, we are planting seeds of faith that will last forever. Thank you for your trust. See you on the next journey.